Well, we'll get straight into it and have a look at what's new in Recap. So Recap has had a number of things over the last year, but the biggest two that we've got are the integration they now have with Autodesk Drive that allows you to upload your projects. I believe we had a pretty significant session on this 2 weeks ago. So for more information on that, I'd actually recommend checking that one out. We will touch on this today when we actually go through with the workflow that we'll be operating with. I'll show you guys how exactly it ties in and we'll be able to look at that. The other thing that's been added is Autodesk Recap Photo. This allows Recap to scan all of your point groups and create a mesh out of them, a 3D mesh. We'll talk about that in a bit, but you're also able to use that mesh to modify and correct it and do some analysis with it. So Recap Photo is able to scan the point cloud to the mesh. It's got a number of surface editing tools within it. It's able to export all of its edits and push it back either to Recap itself. If you want to do more of your Recap editing, you can push it out to InfoWorks or Civil 3D if you wish to work on it in there. If you do wish to just analyze it within Recap Photo itself, we have a few tools we can use to do that. And we're even able to modify the triangles a lot easier than we can in pieces of software like Civil 3D. At least I find it to be easier in here. So we'll go through that, we'll have a look, and we'll see exactly how all that works. Now the 3D mesh itself, we're able to use this in a number of different ways. The most obvious ways are the ones you see on screen. It's able to detect clashes between your point groups. If you have multiple point groups within the same drawing, you're able to easily see the clashes. It highlights red, and you're able to compare between the two. It's able to offer an easier viewing of the model compared to some of the other softwares out there. You can very easily search around. You can set which orientation you want. So you can set that up, have it looking down and be able to orbit around and such. If you have an image set up within Recap using photogrammetry, you're actually able to drape that image over the point cloud. And then you can also apply that to the scanned mesh, making it look a lot more vibrant than the one we can actually see off to the side here. Other than that, you're also able to edit and work with the surface itself. You're able to modify the triangles. You can decimate them to make the surface a lot easier to pass off into other softwares, not something you can easily do in other pieces of software to my knowledge, and various other things. Now, one thing that does need to be brought up though is the fact that when you're doing the scan to mesh, you do actually have to use the Autodesk currency, which is called Cloud Credit. You start off with a significant amount. This is my current amount, as you can see here. I have been doing numerous tests on this. I have been doing this for about 2 months now, and you can see that the one that we're going to be operating today uses 19.4 million points, and it's only going to cost me 1 cloud credit to operate. So you're given a substantial amount of cloud credit when you start off, and you can work with that. The current pricing is fairly extravagant. If you're looking for anything to do with pricing, you can contact your local reseller. They'll be able to give you proper pricing. It's not really something I wish to discuss during this webinar. This is used in a number of different areas. The one that's most common and the one we'll be using it for today is the cloud rendering. So this is submitting it to the cloud, getting Autodesk themselves to run the scan, allowing it to be transformed into a mesh. But it can also be used for the reality capture, so your photogrammetry capturing the real life models and then creating a 3D image off the imagery. And for the simulation area, which I have not touched myself, but I hear is quite powerful. The general workflow for Recap operates pretty similar to what you see on screen. You start off with the raw point cloud. You import that into Autodesk Recap. You have a number of different options in there to reduce it, get it all looking pretty, and pass it in. You crop everything you need. You do a basic analysis to make sure everything's as you expect it to be. You merge all of your point clouds if you have multiple and get everything set up and ready to go. You then run scan to mesh. Depending on the size of your point cloud, I would recommend doing this overnight, as the one that I showed earlier took me about an hour to scan it to the mesh, upload it, and get it ready for recap photo. Once in recap photo, we have a number of different tools we can use to interact with the mesh. We're able to modify it, work with it, analyze it, do what we need. We can work with the triangles, well, view the triangles as well, obviously. And then finally, once you've done that, you'd export it either back into recap or Civil 3D, InfoWorks, wherever you need to place it next. So the exact way of how to share, there's a very easy way to do it. There's an export button within recap photo itself. Recap on its own has a nice big button on the side, which we'll see shortly. It allows you to port it straight from recap into recap photo. You're asked which file you wish to save it to. This is going to be using the AutoCAD cloud. From there, you're able to access that from recap photo. Due to the fact that it's in the cloud though, we're actually able to make changes in recap itself, which will then impact the file in recap photo. You can have this file open multiple times. You'll see in a moment that I've actually got the point cloud itself open in both recap and recap photo. So you can have both open. Once you're done in recap photo, you can export it out to InfoWorks and Civil 3D, along with back into recap. This is all done from the same export window, and you can work with it there. So that's it for the PowerPoint. Yep.
Jack, just a quick question here from Steve. Is the raw point cloud already, does the raw point cloud already have classified points, or does recap do this? So
the classified points are generally, to my knowledge, they're generally put in through the machine before you've put it into recap, and recap just reads the classification. I haven't gone in depth enough to be able to give an 100% surety that recap can do it. From memory, they do have a few options in there to work with that. But more research does need to be done in that area, to my knowledge, as in from our perspective, not from recaps itself.
Yep. Cool. Thanks, Jack.
Cool. All right. So we'll get rid of this now, all that, and we will have a look at Recap Pro itself. So Recap Pro, this is the screen you're going to be met with when you're opening it. You've got all of the current, mouse is buggered off. You've got all your current updates over in the corner here. It'll have the last open job right open when you open it. To access this, you simply click on it and it'll go straight into it. If you want to go back to that home screen, you just click the home button and that'll bring you back to the original screen. Any new projects you want to use, you click the nice big button that says new project and you follow the bouncing ball. Import point cloud works very similar to how it did prior. There's not much more to talk about here. If you wish to know more about importing, I believe we put up a web session about middle last year that talked about importing point clouds, doing some work on them, and then porting it into Civil 3D.
Jack, I'll get the link for that and hand that out at the end.
Cool, thanks for that. Photo to 3D is actually something we are currently investigating. If anyone wants to work with us in terms of photogrammetry, please send me a link. We are looking for as many people as we can to work with the photogrammetry side of this. Yeah, I'm just going to close that off. And we'll have a look at our light view project. So this is one that was picked up by a surveyor in the field. It was to pick up a bunch of stockpiles from memory. And I've just, before we've come into the session, I've cropped out all the unnecessary bits and just gotten these bits of fill here. Now, there are different options you can work with here. We can select the areas we don't want and delete and clear them. You can choose whether or not the selection is going to clip what's inside your selection, or if it's going to delete everything outside of your selection. In this case, we'll We'll keep the stuff inside. We want to get rid of everything. Yes, we want to clip all the inside stuff. So that's removed all that in there. If I unclick all, at the moment, this hasn't been deleted. This has simply been hidden from view. If I exported this at the moment, everything would come through. So I'm going to unclip all and that comes back. If I want to actually remove it, I need to make sure I hit the delete button. So it works a bit differently to how it did prior. It used to be that you'd run the clear one from memory and that would wipe it all. Now clear simply removes your selection. So I just thought that was worth noting. Other than that, the only real addition we've got here is the Recap Data Services tab. What this one allows us to do is this is the option to allow you to scan it to the mesh. Over here, you've got the mesh command, and there's just a big button down the bottom here that says start. Now you can see I've already created the mesh. As I said earlier, this takes a very long time to do, so I have already gone ahead and crafted it. This is just to save time later. So I can automatically view the file. It will take me straight to the created mesh, and I can open it up in Recap Photo, which is a separate program, and work with it in there. To actually show you guys what the form looks like though, I'm just going to click start here. That's just going to run in the background quickly, figure out how many points it's dealing with, and then it'll open up the form. So we'll just give it a second here. So it's just reading all my data, it's updating everything in that mesh, and it's just trying to figure out what I have here. So the first thing we're able to do is we're able to name the mesh. In this case, I'm just naming it after the place where it was picked up, lights view. So we can change this to test 2 if we want. Because I actually have a mesh already created, if I did this now, it would actually cause some issues, so I will leave it as lights view. If you were creating one from scratch though, you could name this whatever you wish, and it would be able to work forward. Now the Autodesk connected drive is what we talked about earlier in terms of the cloud credit and such. This is where the Autodesk connector comes into play. Currently, I have this saved to my C drive, and that C drive is connected to Autodesk Cloud, and Autodesk Cloud allows anyone to access this particular drive, provided I give them the link, similar to how I believe Google Drive works. Obviously, much more involved. It can hold much more data than Google can, but it's very similar in terms of its setup. The mesh quality itself is how detailed you want this mesh to be. How detailed do you want the triangles to be going between the points? If you want this to be a very highly detailed mesh, you're going to want to tick on high, but keep in mind this is going to take a long time to reduce, and the file itself is going to be fairly large. If you want it to be a quickly reduced file that opens up very easily, doesn't have much in the way of size, you would tick on low, and that would create that one. So as you can see, estimated time is 8 minutes. If I have it on high, it's estimated to be about 40. So there's a pretty sizable difference between them. The output format is just what kind of a format you're going to get. I've got both of these ticked on currently. So if I went to my drive at the moment, you would see an OBJ being formed and an RCM file being formed. You will always get the cost that producing this is going to take. It's going to use 1 at the moment, and I have 774,000 credits to use. So I have many more attempts at doing this to get it right if I so needed to. Once you've done that, you hit submit. This form will vanish. You'll still be able to work within the file itself. You will get a menu up the top here that starts to spin saying this is now being reduced. It'll give you a time for how long it thinks it's going to take. And when it's done, you will get a message saying the scan is completed. If you're not sure whether or not the mesh has been fully formed, you can go back to the Recap Data Services, so click on the mesh here, and you should see mesh created in big letters here. Once you have confirmed that, it means that everything's good to go and you can move on to Recap Photo. Normally, once the mesh has been created, Recap Photo will actually open on its own. If it doesn't, however, just do a quick search for it. It gets installed with Recap. At least currently, to my knowledge, it's installed alongside Recap, and you can open it up. So this is Recap Photo. I'll open it up later with the main menu so we can see how the main menu works. Due to the density of this, it does take a little while to open, so I will show you that later on. But this is what we're greeted with. Because we didn't have an image attached to that last one, it doesn't have any colors to pull from, so it's just given us this gray mesh to work with. However, if I go down to visualization, you can see we've got a number of different options that aren't normally available within Recap itself. One of the more interesting ones is the ability to show the wireframe model, showing all of the triangles depicting the surface. So you're able to view this directly. It's being crafted by the point cloud itself. Trying to run this within Civil 3D can be, in my experience, fairly hectic to try and maneuver around and such. I find this to be a much easier method of getting everything visually, well, seeing how the triangles have been formed, what it's done to the surface, and how it's working. But we're able to do different things with it. Recap Photo is a very good way of managing this surface, doing what you need to it, cropping it where you don't need certain parts of it, and working with it. The first one in here allows us, this is our settings for the size of the model, how we're orientating it, and all that. Transforming the model allows us to set the current orientation of it. So currently, it's going straight up. This is what was exported from Recap. North is straight up from the middle of the point cloud. By selecting any surface on here, you can either use the orientation tool or you can pick the surface. Preferably, I like to use pick a surface, as it allows me to set it based on the surface itself. So you can find where you roughly believe to be pointing straight up and set the orientation for it. It just allows you to maneuver easier at times. So you can see that everything I'm orbiting is based around this new orientation now. I'm just going to cancel that for now and get us back to our original orientation of the drawing. One of the other cool things we're able to do though is we can actually set a scale to this. So by selecting this, I'm able to switch this over. You can scale everything by percentage. I personally don't like doing this. I like using the value command. It allows us to select 2 points and then we can tell it what we think the distance is going to be. I can set the units that I wish to work in, so we can set it to millimeters, centimeters, inches, feet, meters, whatever you wish to be working in. I'm going to be working in meters for what we're doing at the moment, but let's say I knew exactly what the distance was between this arbitrary point down here and this one up here. I knew that was going to be 1.5 meters, and it's telling me it's 1.146. I can then put in 1.5 and go set, and that has now scaled that entire drawing by that drawing, our point cloud by that 1.5. So it's a really good way of confirming that everything's what you expect it to be in terms of the scale. The next one we have down is the editing tools. Now, these are some very interesting tools. Slice and fill, for instance, works very similar to how the cropping tool works within Recap. By dragging the circle up and down, we're able to decide how much of it we wish to cut. It's really good for if I only wanted to say the, sorry, I saw someone posted in the Q&A. If you just wanted the stockpiles, we were able to cut these out and just have those. You go apply and then it removes all of them. Now, if I did not have fill selected, if I had no fill selected, it would actually have these as empty husks. As you can see at the moment, there's nothing underneath them. The second I click the second I hit fill, it'll actually fill in all the underneaths when I run apply. So that's now running through, it's slicing them all off. And we can actually see, we should, as not applied. Okay. What that's meant to do is it's meant to go to all the points underneath, and it's meant to fill them all in and make them fully 3D objects. So you don't have something like, let's say you had a building of some sort, it had a gap in it, you sliced off half of that building, so you had a gap in the middle of it, you'd be able to close it off so it creates one object still and not multiple. One of the other ones we've got surface tools in here. This allows us to smooth out any terrain we don't think is correct. So if this was meant to be flat, for instance, I could switch it over to smooth. I'll just reduce the strength of this for now in the brush size. But you're able to smooth out the surface. So you can see it's kind of becoming a bit more flat now. And yeah, you can either commit before you finalize it, or you can discard it. It's up to you which one you want to do. Obviously, this is not an accurate representation of the surface. So I wish to go discard, and it goes back to how it was. You can also use this to fill any holes. If you have any major gaps in the survey, it's able to fill those in. You can select the boundary and choose whether or not you wish to smooth it out or flatten it. We just go flat for now, and that should go through and just find any holes within this boundary and flatten it out. I don't believe it'll find any with what we've got at the moment. Because the boundary includes this section in here, it's not going to flatten this out. Yeah. While that's loading, JT, were there any questions?
Well, we had one about how do I set the coordinate system in recap, but that's not really sort of relevant to the webcast as such. And also, probably in relation to that question, in the chat window, folks, I have put a link to the webinar that was done last year with Jack and our colleague Terry, basically stepping you through the process of getting a point cloud into recap and then getting a surface out into Civil 3D. So have a look at the chat. The attendee who's submitted that question, you may find that that particular webinar is relevant to that particular question that you've raised. But certainly, I don't think we can sort of go into coordinate systems today on this particular webinar, unless you've got any comments here, Jack.
Not really. I will just say we did have a crash, so you get to see the opening screen of recap photo early. This is actually how it looks when you first open it up. All my current jobs are actually listed here that I have currently attached. And to open it, I simply double click the one I wish to open. So let's open it up. Did you have any more to add, JT, before I get going again?
No, go for it.
Cool. So because it's crashed, obviously it didn't get to save, so it's gone back to how it was when we started. Those tools were simply these three in here. Fill holes aims to fill any gaps in your data set that you currently have. So if I ran the drone over and it missed this section in here, running fill holes would flatten it out and fill in that section because you would have selected the boundary going around here and it would have found that to be a gap. You're also able to smooth out the boundary. At the moment, you can see that I have quite a jagged boundary going around my point groups. That would allow you to smooth it out, make it a nice, consistent set of triangles, the surface. If you have any gaps between your point groups, so if I had another one over here, I'd be able to bridge the gap between them. It'd use the triangles to create a best fit for the surface. Yeah. Re-topologize, excuse how I talk, allows you to decimate the mesh for the most part. Well, not for the most part, it does allow you to do that. You're able to choose any value lower than what you have. You cannot choose anything higher. So at the moment, it has found 131,000 triangles within our drawing. Do we wish to decimate this at all to make the file easier to manage? Personally, I can't think of any major reasons to want to decimate your triangles as much as what this allows you to, but you can if you wish. You can either drag it along the bar here to choose how many you wish to delete. So if we set it to 20%, it's going to wipe out 20% of all these triangles. Currently, I have not found a way to control the area where these triangles are being deleted from. It seems to just do a mass deletion of anything within this current project, and it's wiping out 20% of the triangles equally across the entire project. So I go decimate all, it's now going to go across into the little loading bar, and we can see a bunch of little holes that now appeared in our surface. So that is an option if you want to make it a bit smaller. Next up, we have our analysis tools. We got 4 here that we can really work with. The first one allows the software to have a go at detecting and fixing any issues it thinks are relevant in the model. So we select this, you get the ability to detect issues, it's looking through and it's trying to locate anything it sees as an issue. So it actually looks like it's tried its best to revert it to how it was before we ran the decimate tool. You can see a bunch of holes still in here, but it seems to have filled it in a lot better than how it did a second ago. We're actually able to fill in all these holes. So it's now running through and doing something similar to what was in the editing tool, where it's filling in those holes as best it can.
Jack?
Does not like that command.
Oh,
Yep.
Does it? Ah, okay. No, not a problem. No,
Sorry, you go.
I might come back to you. Just in respect to the decimate command, there's a keen-eyed viewer that might have mentioned that there was possibly the option of running a selection when just before you ran the decimate.
Yep.
Tool.
So the selection command is found down here. I did try. I'll turn on the wireframe again. I did run this earlier, but I did not find any. Oh no, I do take that back. It is selecting it this time.
Decimate selection on the bottom left of that where you are. There you go.
Yep.
Gold star to Steve there.
Yes, Steve, you get the gold star.
Excellent, good spot.
Actually, this is very similar to what happened earlier. It selected all of these in this half for some reason.
I've noticed that. Yeah, it's gone for the whole. So it's half a star. Semi works.
But yes, that is what we were trying to do earlier. So half a gold star, Steve. I do apologize if you can hear that in the background. Someone's just had an accident or something from the sounds of it. Measure distance allows us to measure the distance between any 2 points. It works a little different to how some of the other softwares do. Instead of a drag to find it out, it's double click and the distance appears on the side here. By using this drop down here, we're able to choose between the different standards we want, different units. So you can select millimeter if you want, you can select centimeter, you can select feet and inches, you can select between all of them. Once you've done that, you've also got the mesh report. This is just a basic, it shows you how many vertexes are currently being used. It shows you how many faces are currently in the area, what the total surface area is, and what the volume is. If you use the selection tool, and then you run this, it'll update to, it'll show just that area. The last one in this analyzed one is actually to compare 2 models. So this is a really cool one. It allows you to actually, if you have a second model that would overlay this one, so you've gone out to this site, you've done your survey, you picked all this up, you've got all these raised ground in here. We want to make sure that it's been flattened out. You can then go out, do your survey again where they've removed all this raised ground and make sure it's all worked. So I've got my first one in here. It's the light view one. I want to select a second one. So I'm going to go browse, which is the compare with option. It's taking me by default to the light view mesh folder, but I'm just going to go back to my data and go to test. I've got another model in here, another scan to mesh document, which I'm now going to open. It won't actually show you this one. It's just going off the belief that they've been placed in the right spot. And then you can run the align. So that's now gone, okay, yep, both of those alignments are complete. You actually saw a little toggle down here of your keynote saying that it's all been fully run, and you're able to set up your rules for the comparison. Now, when I run this, the two documents, the two meshes are completely different. They're in completely different areas, so there won't be much of a comparison at all. But you can see here, you can actually set the tolerance range to whatever you wish. If I want to change this to 80, we'll see this green one actually move down to 80% is in the green. Sorry, 80 meters is in the green. We'll work with that. Once you're good, you hit compare, and it's now overlaying the two and showing you what the difference is. Again, because there's no alignment between the two that's accurate, it's just going, okay, everything's a teal color. If you want to export this, the only export method that I've seen is a PNG, which you can then export. So for any actual comparison reports you wish, I would highly recommend exporting it out to Civil 3D and doing your comparison in there. But this is a good way to initially check to make sure everything's looking what it should. Once you're done, hit the X and you'll be taken back to the view you had prior. Finally on our list is the export command. You're able to export an image similar to what we had with the comparison. It allows us to export just a basic PNG image of the surface. You can export a video, which allows you to do a fly through of your model, showing off everything you've done. The last one though is the actual one that we want to be using, which is the export model, and allows us to export it to whichever file format we wish. The ones that we've got access to are OBJ, RCS is another popular one, and FBX. To my knowledge, Civil 3D will take all three of those. RCS is the easiest one for it to take, and RCS is also the easiest one to port back into Recap proper. Selecting these, you're able to choose. So earlier we were able to set a basic coordinate system. You're able to tick on whether or not you want that to be active or if you want it to be the original. You can again set the target face count. So if we want to decimate most of the triangles, we can. Currently the textures we've got, we don't have any images attached, so it's just going to use the basic texture of grey. Yeah. You can also use the quick export model. The quick export just pushes it straight out. You can see that I'm not given very many options at all, unlike the advanced method. This is just to get it out quickly, easily. I don't have to think about it. I click the button and out it goes. Once you're done, you tick on the quality you want the mesh to be pushed out as, similar to what we had in Recap. I would highly recommend pushing it out as high and then going backwards if you need. So that way you've always got the most detailed mesh you can have. And if you need to get rid of some of it, you can. Once you push that out, that will be exported straight to that cloud file again, cloud folder, and you'll be able to port it into whichever you wish.
So if you are interested in the recording, again, the reason why we harp on about the recording is because even when we're midway through a webinar, we still get people asking on the Q&A panel, is there a recording? So I'm really just reinforcing the fact that yes, there will be, and yes, it will be on this particular channel by the end of the day, and it is entirely free. Go in and grab whatever resources you want from here. You can go ahead and consume as many of these as you want. Secondly, the mailing of this particular webinar is sent out usually the day before. If you're interested in, if maybe you haven't received that particular email, someone's maybe referred to you this particular webcast, you can go ahead and find that here. I thought I had a link on here to our webcast page on the website, but I don't. But civilsurveysolutions.com.au, I think it's /webcasts or /resources. Have a look on our website anyway, and you'll see on there that there's an option to provide feedback. So if you are interested in finding out about a particular topic, feel free to jump in and have a look at that particular web page and just simply provide us with an idea that you want to see. We're not averse to getting direction from customers when it comes to the webinars, so feel free to do that. Thanks very much for the presentation today, Jack.
All good. I hope it was insightful for everyone.
Yeah, and look, we hope you're all staying safe. I've got another week of lockdown, or another week and a half of lockdown, because I'm in Greater Sydney. Happy days. We hope the rest of you are staying safe, keeping well, and we look forward to seeing you all very soon.